let me draw you deeper into a scenario that's all too common yet critically revealing. It's 4 a.m. and the darkness envelops your room. Your alarm is set to shatter the silence any moment now, placed last night with a vow. Today is the day it all changes. Today you start your new morning routine. Yet, as the alarm tears through the quiet, a subtle but persuasive voice begins to bargain with you. Just 5 more minutes, it whispers seductively. You deserve more rest. You can start tomorrow. This sounds familiar, doesn't it? But what if I told you that this moment, this seemingly small decision, is where your entire future takes shape? It's not just about silencing the alarm or the morning workout. It's about something more profound, your commitment to consistency. In Stoicism, every decision reflects our philosophy of life. By choosing to rise, you honor a covenant with your future self, a promise to live with purpose and discipline. And yet, we often falter, just as research indicates that 92% of people abandon their New Year's resolutions by February. This isn't just a statistic. It's a reflection of the battle we all face against the lure of comfort over the challenge of growth. The Stoics taught us that nature operates with unwavering consistency. The sun rises, the seasons change, the heart beats. All around us, the universe adheres to a divine rhythm. So why do we, made to mirror such order and resilience, struggle so profoundly with consistency? Today, let's delve into how embracing the Stoic principles of commitment and courage can fundamentally transform our lives, ensuring that our actions align not just with our intentions, but with our highest ideals. Join me as we explore how to harness the power of our decisions, turning everyday moments into the pillars of a purposeful and steadfast life. If you appreciate the insights we're diving into here, a simple favor I'll ask from you is to hit the subscribe button and share this video with others who are on this journey of self-discipline and growth. Today's exploration might challenge skeptics and provoke thought among even the most disciplined minds. So, I encourage you to watch until the end as we uncover how even the smallest decisions can set the stage for profound transformations. Now let's dive into the heart of Stoicism and daily consistency. The battle with the morning alarm. The alarm rings in the darkness, cutting through the quiet stillness of early morning. It's 4 a.m. and the world outside is hushed, still wrapped in the shadows of night. For a brief moment, there's silence in your mind, a recognition of the day beginning, an opportunity to take charge. But then, as if on cue, a familiar voice stirs within you. Just 5 more minutes. You've been working hard. You deserve a little more rest. That voice, so persuasive and well-timed, knows exactly how to bargain with your ambition. In that instant, you're caught at a crossroads, and the choice you make here, seemingly small, almost trivial, sets the tone for your day and, in many ways, your life. Will you embrace discomfort and rise, honoring the promise you made to yourself? Or will you lean into the warmth of your bed, putting off today's goals until a more convenient time? For the Stoics, this moment is a test of character, a practice in fortifying the mind against the pull of comfort and inertia. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, at dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work as a human being. What do I have to complain of if I'm going to do what I was born for, the things I was brought into the world to do? It's not just about waking up or sticking to a routine. It's a covenant you make with yourself, a commitment to act in alignment with your highest values. Consistency, according to Stoic philosophy, is a virtue. It's the daily, disciplined act of honoring your principles, regardless of mood or circumstance. Every time you choose to rise despite the comfort calling you back, you strengthen this bond with your future self. Think of it as a deposit into the account of who you're becoming. And each time you choose ease over effort, you're making a withdrawal, a slight betrayal of your long-term goals. The Stoics believed in the power of small, consistent actions to build character. They observed how nature itself adheres to a rhythm. The sun rises, the seasons change, all with unwavering regularity. In the same way, you are capable of building your own inner consistency, mirroring this natural order. When you choose discipline over delay, you're not just getting out of bed, you're practicing resilience. You're becoming the person you aspire to be. And so that moment, seemingly trivial in the grand scheme of life, becomes a powerful moment of decision. It's a defining point in your day. Will you rise and step into who you're meant to be, or will you allow the voice of comfort to keep you where you are? Every morning, this battle with the alarm is a chance to train your will, to test your resolve, and to live in accordance with your values. It's a Stoic practice in real time, a commitment to live a life that isn't swayed by mood, but anchored by purpose. Recognize the common struggle. We all know this struggle, that feeling of motivation at the start of something new, the fresh energy, the fierce determination to change, to finally break the old habits and establish new ones. Maybe it's the promise of a new year, a new week, or simply a new mindset. You set the goal, plan the routine, tell yourself, this time it will be different. Yet just weeks or even days later, the spark fades, and you find yourself right back where you started. This isn't just a personal failing, it's a deeply human experience. Research even tells us that around 92% of people abandon their goals shortly after setting them. It's as though there's an invisible force drawing us back to our old selves. The Stoics understood this well. They didn't see it as weakness or as a reason to give up on self-discipline. Instead, they recognized it as the essential conflict between comfort and growth. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Every time we encounter resistance, whether it's the lure of an extra hour of sleep or the comfort of our usual habits, we face an opportunity to transcend it, to turn obstacles into stepping stones. This internal battle isn't just about motivation, it's about our relationship with discipline, with the will to rise above our immediate desires for the sake of something greater. Carl Jung put it simply, "You are what you do, not what you say you'll do." The intentions we set, the plans we make, are empty without the actions to back them up. There's an illusion in setting a goal. It feels like progress, but the real growth only comes from consistently showing up, even on the days we don't feel like it. Jung saw this challenge as a psychological struggle with the shadow, that part of us that resists growth and pulls us back to safety and comfort. Facing the shadow, like the Stoics facing their inner resistance, requires more than a burst of motivation. It demands daily, steady commitment to the person we aspire to be. This common struggle against inconsistency is, in a way, a fight for freedom. Because every time we give in to comfort, we let our impulses control us. We become slaves to our moods and desires. The Stoics sought to break free from this cycle by strengthening their resolve, training their minds to stay centered, and grounding themselves in values over feelings. For Epictetus, true freedom was mastery over oneself, an ability to direct one's actions in harmony with one's beliefs. When we build consistency, we're not just forming habits, we're building that freedom. So, if you're someone who's felt the surge of motivation only to be disappointed by your return to old habits, understand that this is not failure. It's a universal human experience, one that thinkers and philosophers have grappled with for centuries. The challenge isn't in wanting to change, it's in committing to that change every day. And it's here, in this universal struggle, that Stoicism offers a path forward, not with quick fixes or bursts of inspiration, but with a steady commitment to becoming who we truly want to be. The Stoic perspective on consistency. The Stoics had a profound understanding of consistency. They didn't see it as a chore or an obligation, but as a way of embodying their deepest values day after day. To a Stoic, consistency is more than habit. It's a deliberate alignment between one's actions and beliefs, even when it's uncomfortable or inconvenient. Marcus Aurelius approached each day as a practice of living in line with his principles, a commitment that wasn't dependent on how he felt at any given moment. He famously reminded himself, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be one." For the Stoics, it wasn't about lofty goals, but about showing up each day with intention and integrity. The Stoic view of consistency is all about resilience and mastery over oneself. They saw each act of consistency as a step toward inner freedom, a way of liberating oneself from the whims of mood and circumstance. This approach challenges the common belief that motivation is needed to stay consistent. In Stoicism, consistency isn't about waiting for motivation. It's about cultivating discipline so strong that it becomes second nature. They understood that lasting change doesn't come from a single moment of inspiration, but from steady, repeated action. Just as water shapes rock through a constant flow, we shape our character through daily, consistent choices. Carl Jung's insights echo this idea. He argued that true transformation requires not just a desire to change, but the courage to act repeatedly, even when our desires and impulses try to pull us in different directions. Jung believed that every person carries a shadow, a part of ourselves that resists growth, a part that craves comfort and familiarity over the discomfort of change. The Stoics recognized this part of themselves too, and rather than battling it directly, they developed a method of transcendence. By choosing actions that reflect their highest values day in and day out, they quieted the shadow's influence, diminishing its pull by refusing to feed it with inconsistency. Think about how Epictetus, who was once a slave, used consistency to reshape his life. He didn't have control over his circumstances, but he understood that he had full control over his actions, his responses, his will. He trained himself to remain steady, to choose actions that aligned with his principles regardless of the hardships he faced. In many ways, his entire philosophy rested on this foundation of self-discipline, of choosing his response to life moment by moment. This is what made him free in the deepest sense, a freedom that didn't depend on external conditions, but on his unwavering consistency. In Stoicism, this consistency is a virtue in itself, a way of cultivating strength, integrity, and inner peace. Rather than being swayed by every mood or circumstance, Stoics grounded themselves in their values and allowed those values to guide every action. This was their method of achieving what Jung might call individuation, the process of becoming whole, integrated, and true to oneself. For the Stoics, consistency was the path to wholeness, a way of becoming fully who they were meant to be. Breaking down barriers. When we talk about barriers, we often think of external obstacles, work deadlines, lack of time, or limited resources. But the truth is, the most challenging barriers are the ones we build within ourselves. The Stoics understood this deeply, seeing inner resistance as one of life's greatest teachers. Seneca once wrote, "It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that they are difficult." Many of the walls we face are built from our own doubts, fears, and desire for comfort, and recognizing this truth is the first step to dismantling them. These internal barriers are subtle. They appear in the form of excuses. "I'll start tomorrow," "I'm too tired," or "I'm just not ready." Each time we give in to these thoughts, we strengthen them, making the walls a little higher, a little thicker. Carl Jung saw this resistance as a natural part of the psyche, what he called the shadow. The shadow is the part of us that avoids growth and prefers familiarity over challenge. According to Jung, ignoring or fighting against the shadow only gives it more power. The Stoics had a different approach. They practiced acknowledging their inner resistance without letting it dictate their actions. Marcus Aurelius confronted his own resistance head-on, treating each obstacle as an opportunity to grow stronger. He wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This Stoic mindset transforms barriers into teachers. Instead of seeing challenges as reasons to stop, the Stoic approach encourages us to lean into them, to face the discomfort as part of our development. Each time we push against these barriers, we become a bit more resilient, a bit more equipped to face the next one. In this way, the walls that once confined us become stepping stones on our journey. For many of us, comfort is one of the biggest barriers to growth. It's easy to fall into routines that don't challenge us because they feel safe and familiar. But as Epictetus reminds us, no man is free who is not master of himself. Every time we choose comfort over challenge, we hand over control to the part of us that wants to stay the same. Real freedom, according to the Stoics, comes from mastering this part of ourselves, from breaking free of the patterns that keep us small. This mastery isn't about denying our desire for comfort, but about putting it in its proper place. Stoicism teaches us to embrace discomfort as a necessary part of growth, to see it as a sign that we're pushing past our limits. Imagine each barrier as a test of character, a chance to practice the Stoic virtues of courage, discipline, and resilience. Just as a muscle grows stronger through resistance, so too does our character when we push against these inner walls. The Stoics didn't view challenges as unfortunate setbacks. They saw them as essential parts of the human experience, each one an opportunity to practice virtue. And with each barrier we break, we get closer to the person we're meant to become. Jung believed that what you resist persists, suggesting that our barriers don't disappear by ignoring them. Instead, they become louder, more persistent. The Stoics understood this and saw acceptance as key to overcoming internal obstacles. By acknowledging our resistance without letting it control us, we're free to act in line with our values. Each barrier then becomes an invitation to know ourselves better, to see where we are still clinging to comfort over growth. The real enemy, comfort. It's subtle, often disguised as kindness to ourselves, a well-deserved break, or a chance to recharge. But over time, the pull of comfort becomes more than just rest. It becomes a habit, a place we return to again and again until it quietly takes control. The Stoics had a clear view on this. To them, comfort was a dangerous sedative, lulling us into complacency, convincing us that there's always tomorrow to pursue our goals, always another chance to do the hard work of becoming who we truly want to be. Marcus Aurelius warned against this pull, reminding himself each morning that he was born to act with purpose, not to indulge in ease. At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, "I have to go to work as a human being," he wrote. The work he referred to was the work of virtue, of doing what is right and necessary, regardless of how comfortable or uncomfortable it might feel. For the Stoics, this daily choice between comfort and discipline was nothing less than the essence of life. To choose comfort was to betray one's purpose, to abandon the commitment to growth and integrity. Carl Jung saw this pull of comfort in psychological terms, identifying it as part of the shadow, the part of us that resists change and prefers the familiarity of the known over the challenge of the unknown. Jung believed that the comfort-seeking part of us often masks deeper fears. the fear of failure, of stepping into uncertainty, of confronting parts of ourselves that might be uncomfortable to face. So, comfort becomes a defense mechanism, a way to protect ourselves from the discomfort of growth. But in doing so, it keeps us from realizing our full potential, from becoming whole. Think about it. Every time we choose comfort over growth, we reinforce this habit of avoidance. We become used to taking the easier road, and soon that road becomes the only path we know. The Stoics understood that true progress requires us to resist this temptation. Epictetus said, "We must undergo a hard winter training and not rush into things for which we haven't prepared." For Epictetus, resisting comfort was a discipline, a form of training that prepared the mind and spirit for life's inevitable challenges. He saw comfort as a temporary pleasure, a fleeting indulgence, while discipline was a long-term investment in one's character and resilience. The problem with comfort is that it promises peace but delivers stagnation. It's easy to say, "I'll start tomorrow," but each delay builds a habit of inaction, and soon, weeks, months, even years pass without meaningful progress. Comfort is like a warm cocoon that protects us from the world, but it also keeps us from growing, from stretching into the person we want to become. The Stoics believed that growth comes from challenging the self, from pushing past what feels easy and familiar. As Seneca said, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body." True peace, they taught, is found not in avoiding challenges, but in facing them and proving to ourselves that we can overcome. The irony of comfort is that, while it feels good in the moment, it often leads to long-term dissatisfaction. A life spent avoiding difficulty is a life without the satisfaction of accomplishment, the pride that comes from pushing through adversity. The Stoics understood that the greatest reward comes not from a life of ease, but from a life of purpose, of struggle, of overcoming. Every time we choose discomfort, we grow a little stronger, a little more resilient, and over time, this resilience builds a deep inner peace, a confidence that can't be shaken by life's inevitable hardships. To live as a Stoic, then, is to see comfort as a challenge in itself, a test of our commitment to our values. It's easy to stay in bed, to postpone our goals, to choose the path of least resistance, but the Stoics remind us that the path of growth is rarely easy. The real enemy isn't the difficulty of the task. It's the voice that tells us we don't need to try. It's the seductive whisper of comfort, promising peace but delivering regret. In breaking free from this habit of comfort, we reclaim our lives. We return to our values, our purpose, and our inner strength. And in doing so, we become more like the person we wish to be. We become, as the Stoics might say, aligned with nature, resilient, and unshaken by the highs and lows of fortune. To rise above the pull of comfort is not just an act of discipline, it's an act of freedom. By choosing growth over ease, we claim our true power and we step onto the path of a life well lived. Consistency as a form of freedom. This might sound paradoxical at first. After all, when we think of freedom, we often imagine complete flexibility, the ability to do whatever we want, whenever we want. But the Stoics saw freedom differently. To them, true freedom wasn't about escaping commitment or avoiding discipline. It was about mastering oneself to the point where external circumstances no longer dictated their actions. In this sense, consistency, daily discipline in thought and action, becomes the foundation of true freedom. It's the ability to act in accordance with our principles, regardless of what happens around us. Epictetus famously said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Consistency, in his eyes, was a means of gaining that mastery. If we allow ourselves to be ruled by moods, by fluctuating desires, or by the opinions of others, we become slaves to things beyond our control. The Stoics believed that every time we choose to act consistently with our values, we reinforce our inner freedom, aligning our actions with who we truly want to be. It's about creating a steady rhythm, one that we can rely on, so that no matter what storms may come, we know we can stand firm. Consistency frees us from the sway of emotions that change moment by moment. Imagine for a second if we only worked, only exercised, only pursued our goals when we felt like it. Our lives would be in constant flux, endlessly pulled by shifting feelings. Marcus Aurelius knew this well, reminding himself to waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. To him, freedom was the ability to choose his actions based on his principles, not his feelings. Each consistent act builds a layer of resilience, making us less vulnerable to the highs and lows of daily life. With consistency, we gain a sense of stability that no passing emotion can shake. Carl Jung also spoke to this idea of inner freedom, noting that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But to become that person requires a commitment to daily actions that align with our highest self. This is where consistency comes in. It's not about doing the same thing every day just for the sake of routine. It's about building the structure in our lives that allows us to grow into the people we aspire to be. Each time we honor that structure, we free ourselves a bit more from the impulses and fears that hold us back. We become less reactive, more deliberate, and ultimately more in control of our destiny. The Stoics saw freedom not as a life without boundaries, but as a life governed by self-made boundaries. To them, freedom wasn't a lack of rules, but the right rules. They understood that if we don't set our own limits, then the world will set them for us. Consistency is what allows us to live by our own design rather than by default. When we consistently act in line with our values, we create a life that reflects our true priorities rather than just reacting to the day's distractions or demands. In a world that constantly pulls us in different directions, consistency becomes a form of resistance, a way of saying, I know who I am, and I know what I stand for. In a practical sense, consistency also creates freedom because it removes decision fatigue. When we build habits around our values, we no longer have to constantly decide whether or not to act on them. Just as a skilled musician no longer thinks about each note, but plays with freedom through practiced consistency, we too can move through life with a sense of ease when our actions align with our principles. This is what the Stoics aspired to, a state where their character, not their mood or situation, dictated their actions. This kind of freedom, born from consistency, brings a quiet confidence that can't be shaken. It's the freedom that comes from knowing that no matter what the day brings, we are prepared to meet it with strength and resilience. When we act consistently, we make ourselves immune to the chaos of the external world. The Stoic commitment to consistency was not just about discipline, it was about achieving a state of mind where they could remain calm, focused, and unshaken. This is a profound kind of freedom. Freedom from the need for approval, freedom from the fear of failure, and freedom from the pull of immediate gratification. So, while freedom and consistency may seem like opposites, they are in fact two sides of the same coin. Consistency is what enables us to live with purpose and clarity. It allows us to build a life on our own terms, aligned with our values and unshaken by fleeting distractions. This freedom, rooted in discipline and self-mastery, is one that no external force can take away. It's the freedom the Stoics believed in, a freedom grounded in who we are and strengthened by the choices we make day after day. Forge your Stoic path. This is your Stoic call to action, to bring your values to life, to turn what you know into what you do. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." This line cuts straight to the core of the Stoic approach. Don't dwell endlessly on what you could do or on what others think. Instead, let your actions speak. This is the moment to stop waiting for the right time or the perfect conditions. It's the moment to begin where you are, with what you have, taking steps that align with your purpose. For the Stoics, philosophy wasn't an abstract discipline, but a guide for living. Each day brought new chances to practice courage, temperance, and justice. It wasn't about being flawless, it was about being intentional. Seneca said, "Begin at once to live and count each separate day as a separate life." This is the Stoic challenge, not to wait for a grand moment of transformation, but to treat every single day as a practice, an opportunity to get closer to the person you want to become. Every morning you have the chance to ask yourself, how will I live today? What actions will align me with my values? Carl Jung, who delved deeply into the journey of self-awareness, believed that you are what you do, not what you say you'll do. Our intentions, however noble, are only thoughts until they manifest through action. It's easy to get caught up in planning, in preparing, in envisioning the person we want to be. But the real challenge is showing up, especially when it's inconvenient or difficult. Jung would argue that every time we choose action over idle contemplation, we strengthen our authentic self, breaking through the resistance of the shadow that clings to comfort and safety. Consider each small act as a building block in the foundation of your character. The Stoics knew that we are not born virtuous. We become virtuous through practice. Just as an athlete trains to strengthen their body, we can train our minds and our will through consistent practice of Stoic principles. If we want to become more resilient, we need to act resiliently each day, not just when it's easy, but especially when it's challenging. Each choice to take action, to step into our values, reinforces the habits of mind and spirit that make us who we are. In moments of doubt, the Stoics would remind us to return to our principles. Epictetus advised that we should constantly remind ourselves of what we truly value and then make every decision with those values in mind. This is the call to action, to bring mindfulness to our daily lives, to make our values the compass guiding our choices. It doesn't require grand gestures, it requires small acts done consistently with integrity and awareness. Imagine what your life would look like if each day you practiced one small act aligned with your values, whether it's choosing patience over anger, discipline over procrastination, or gratitude over complaint. These choices made daily build up over time. They shape our character and ultimately our life's path. This is the Stoic journey, one that begins not in times of ease or comfort, but in moments of challenge. It's about taking ownership, about deciding that you will shape your life, rather than letting your circumstances or impulses shape you. Remember, the power of Stoicism isn't in grand gestures, but in the quiet, steady commitment to live by your principles every single day. True strength is built in those small, consistent actions, in choosing discipline over comfort and purpose over convenience. Every decision, every moment, is a chance to shape the person you want to become. Thank you for being here.